Smart on her new role here as her Associate Vice President for Operations and Strategic Initiatives for our Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So I'm just absolutely, as our entire office, and I know our health and health sciences and our communities are really so excited for this, and appreciate Lindsay so much and what she brings. And I want to also just take a minute and just say thank you to Dr. Godwin, who led the search, and the amazing search committee, and the other candidates. It was highly competitive, and we are just so thrilled that Dr. Smart is our new AVP for Operations Strategic Initiatives. So she'll help us lead in development and implementation of strategies and initiatives to promote DEI and social justice, and of course, collaborate with our communities across New Mexico. But Dr. Smart has just, as we all know here, and those who have not yet had the opportunity to work with her, you're going to find out, but she's just had a profound commitment to DEI over her 15 years here across, of course, UNM and our health sciences, but throughout the state, and also her reputation regionally and nationally. She's so highly respected for that work, as well as her amazing interpersonal communication skills. And she brings amazing leadership and strategic vision for us, and just a deep appreciation for New Mexico's climate and culture. And so the amazing work she's done with our recruitment roadmap, and co-chair of the Inclusive Excellence Council Workforce Development Committee, and so many other things that she's done. And we'll get an announcement out with all of the many accolades, and so many of the different things that Dr. Smart has already contributed. But I know that on behalf of Amaris and I and our entire office, Dr. Crandall, all of us, we are thrilled and excited, and I can't even honestly find words, because I'm very honored to continue to be able to work with Dr. Smart and have her in this new role. And as such, she will also be the vice chair for the IEC council as well. So congratulations, Lindsay. Thank you so much. And again, really thrilled for you. And anyone else? I know there are chats. I just keep seeing things like all over the place, but I can't even read them. But I know we're going to have some time to celebrate as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Val. I appreciate that. And thank you all for the congratulations. I am very grateful for the opportunity to keep growing in my skill set and my role with the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office, and just getting to really know the community even more. The breadth and depth of diversity in the state are just something that I have found are so important to keeping me here working with the community. And I also know that there is so much that I really don't know and still don't understand about all the ways that we can do better, I think, to improve lives of the folks we serve and teach and work with and do research for and with. So I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yes, and thank you again, Lindsay. And of course, everyone here is actually getting to hear about this and our DEI officers early, because we've been trying to get it into our communications and the word out. So you all are first on here, you Dr. Roy Ball and Kendra, like our office, of course, others we know, but we're excited that you all are the first to also get this as well. So thank you. And I'll be signing off. Dr. Crandall and Fabian, thank you for what you're helping and training today. And I'm sorry I'll miss that. But again, thank you all for everything that you're doing. And what a go, Lindsay. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's breaking news. We'll have to make it go viral with the TikTok.
Yeah, breaking news.
I don't have TikTok, but I know somebody here knows how to make some good TikTok products, and we'll get on it. As long as there's no dancing involved, although that might make it go viral. All right, let's see here. Other announcements that folks, oh wait, first, no, we're not doing announcements. We are going to the EVP update, and that will be provided for us by Chinoa. And so I will turn over the stage to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smart. Congratulations, Lindsay, and we're so thrilled for you and our community here. Thank you all so much. Gina is on travel with Dr. Zadonis and Helen Maestas. They're out at Los Alamos at our UNM branch campus. And so on their behalf and on behalf of our EVP office, I'm providing updates for all of us. And Amaris and Lindsay were so wonderful to create a slide. So there are several updates emerging throughout the next few months. We've all been planning different types of forums, gatherings, and summits, as well as upcoming reports that will be emerging that will be shared with you as well. The first, we're excited to share through Dr. Valerie Romero-Leggett's office and each of you that work with DEI. We're so thrilled. Thank you, Kendra, for creating this incredible flyer. Amy Green, Luis Carlos, and Roberta Zayas and I have been working on this assets mapping for her health career pathways since the second Health Equity Summit in December. And they had an incredible webinar in April, really trying to broaden the outreach to see where are the BA/MD programs in the state, where are different health career pathways that we may not know about in southern New Mexico and northern New Mexico, in our tribal nations. So we discussed with Gina and many others, how can we expand this and continue this effort? This will help the New Mexico Department of Health. This will help our public health regions, our school districts, our community colleges, our tribal colleges, and our universities, but also really to support our youth and having them have a strong vision for themselves. And the mentors, all of you are mentors for our young people, our learners, and I'd love for you all to join us if you are able to. This will happen on Thursday, August 8th. Chancellor Dr. Sabrina Ezel, who's also a nurse, but is the Chancellor of UNM Gallup Branch, has hosted a couple of forums last summer to really think about what would it feel like or be like if we were to expand Health Sciences Center in northern New Mexico or the Northwest region or southern region of New Mexico. So we gathered health clinicians and other healthcare providers, community health workers. So those were incredible gatherings that took place twice last summer. This one she is hosting specifically for health career pathways. And the agenda is very detailed. We're going to have local champions, Jonathan Lumibao, who is a faculty and staff. He's the director of the nursing program for UNM Gallup Branch. Will really lead the effort in terms of bringing in students, faculty, and staff. School will not have begun yet, so we're hoping that we do get some faculty early, as well as students to come join the effort and talk about their experiences. They have an incredible mid-school, high school, charter school at UNM Gallup Branch, as well as incredible education to career programs. Last year, about 15 high school students built 30 homes in the Gallup community. So looking at social determinants of health and really expanding the outreach in terms of how do we bring stability to people, to patients, to clients who are in need of that stability, and housing is one of the big factors. So we're really grateful to really look at a holistic worldview of health career pathways. Next, we will have the Dual Diagnosis Summit. This emerged out of the Homeless Coordinating Council, which began from President Stokes 2.5 years ago. Dr. Zadonis was the chair. A personal passion of his is housing and working with unsheltered people and addiction. So he was the chair of the HCC last year. I joined approximately last October. I helped organize a grassroots organization called the Southwest Indigenous Housing Justice Collaborative over 4 years ago with Navajo Honorable Council Delegate Amber Crotty, as well as Terry Sloan and Don Begay. Each of us were so concerned about unsheltered community members, the high rates of families who are unhoused in Albuquerque Public Schools. There's over 3,000 families that are currently unhoused, seeking shelter, as well as elders and other individuals who may have addiction, and really looking at trauma-informed approaches and harm reduction approaches to support their housing needs. So grateful that Gateway Center has been established, and A new look at the West Side Shelter is taking place by Nicole Rogers, City Council Nicole Rogers, as well as Commissioner Adrienne Barbeau and many others have come together to really address this core issue. So this topic came out of a conversation last year from Commissioner Barboa, who stated that she really feels like we need to do something better for our communities, have better warm handoffs, referral network to take place in the city and the county, and really support those that are coming in from other communities throughout the state who seek care here. So Dr. Zadonis, Dr. Marisa Towen, and Dr. Sunil Bhatt have all co-created this agenda. I helped work on it with several others, with Pari Noskin, who's a social worker, and Destiny Onan. So we're grateful that this is going to take place. The new superintendent of Albuquerque Public Schools has sponsored the event. So APS Bonifacio Development Center is free. It would have been about $6,000 or $7,000 to pay for it, but now it is sponsored and hosted by APS. So we're really grateful for their sponsorship and support. You're welcome to come. Registration will soon be open after Project Echo's CEU CME process completes the agenda finalization. So just wanted to share that with you, but registration will soon be open and we'll let you know when that opens as well. Next, we're excited to talk about the save the date for the third Health Equity Summit. Thank you to those that are on the planning committee. We'll be reconvening soon again, have exciting updates about the agenda. It'll be a day and a half. Day one will be a plenary session from 1 to 5 with keynote speakers, panelists, and then an evening reception from 5:30 to 7:30 at Embassy Suites. We would really love to honor our community health workers and community health representatives, our heroes, tribal heroes, and other community health staff throughout the state. Working diligently with Dr. Kaufman and many others around the state, from Secretary Allen, Department of Health's office, as well as different health councils and tribal health councils, to really find a way in which we can train CHWs and CHRs on day one, since their statewide conference will be on the next day, the 29th and the 30th. So we still want to offer CEUs for our CHWs and CHRs. And then day two will be full day of breakouts, looking at all various areas of environmental health, behavioral health, physical well-being, transportation, housing, homelessness, and innovative practices. And also really bringing in a panel of elected officials who have addressed these through their legislation. So we're really thrilled about this. So this is our save the date. And once Dory Murray and Project Echo work with us on finalizing the agenda, then we'll be opening up the registration. So we're really thrilled about this. Next, there are two initiatives that are coming out of President Stokes' office for 1UNM. First is the Substance Use Disorder Center, led by Katie Wetzkowitz. So sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name. Dr. Kimberly Page and Dr. Sunil Bhatt. They formed a work group with a direct request from the Board of Regents. This will be presented to the HSC committee for the Board of Regents on Thursday, August 8th. And then secondly, a Healthcare Workforce Act was formed out of the President's office. They hired a consultant group to create a comprehensive report. Once the report is completed, it will be disseminated out to each of you, and Gina and Dr. Zadonis will ensure that they provide that soon. So thank you all so much. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me. I'll put my number in the chat, or feel free to come by and visit. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. That was some fantastic stuff there. I was looking at my calendar trying to see how many of these I could also get to. Are there any questions or follow-up to what Chanel just shared with us? Hopefully they're things people can make or add to your schedule. Okay, well, you all know how to reach Chanel when you do have a question. Now we'll move into some general announcements or updates that people would like to just go ahead and unmute if you're able to, or add in the chat, and we can certainly share it with folks if you have any you'd like to add.
Dr. Smart, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and congratulate Dr. Cameron Crandall for being designated as a distinguished faculty member. Congratulations, Dr. Crandall.
Very big congratulations. I feel like that warrants some like a speech. I won't make you do a speech, but when you put distinguished in front of it, it sounds speech worthy. Congratulations. Other announcements or updates?
I'm going to drop in a reminder, save the date for an upcoming clinical training on providing gender affirming care. So I'll drop that in as soon as I find it in my email. So.
Perfect. Thank you. Is that the ECHO series, or is that separate from the ECHO series on gender affirming care?
No, this is separate. We're actually bringing in experts from outside to come and do some specific trainings.
Awesome. Wonderful.
It's largely targeted towards clinicians, but anyone would find it useful.
Wonderful. And then we got in the chat here, we announcement from the Leo office that there is applications open for the Building Inclusive Leadership. It's open to all HSC students and trainees. And there's a flyer there you can download and start disseminating so we could get applications in by August 19th. Thank you. Other updates, announcements, things to celebrate? Okay, we will keep going then. If something pops in your mind, just go ahead and drop it in the chat and we'll make sure that folks see it. But we're going to move now to Dr. Crandall's presentation, and I don't yet see Fabian, so I'm not sure if it's still.
Yeah, he told me this morning that he had a conflict, so it's just gonna be me.
All right, it's not just you, it is you.
Well,
we'll turn it over.
All right, just a second, let me share my slides. Let's switch presenter screens here. All right, hopefully that's correct.
Actually, go back to the other way.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah, you were right the first time.
Oh, which is weird because actually it's backwards on my computer. All right, cool. So I'm going to be, unfortunately, I'm going to be looking off to the wrong direction. But anyway, welcome everybody. Thank you for inviting us to talk on gender affirming care and our Identities Matters materials. So we did a presentation back in 2022, and so I didn't want to really repeat exactly all the material that we had in that. So instead of some of that material, I've added in some institutional considerations around making changes for improving care largely for gender diverse individuals. So we're going to go over just some reminders about what the dimensions of sex and gender. We're going to focus again, as I mentioned, on really looking at organizational change and some of the things that we've done, for example, in electronic health record and other areas that have been, I think, useful. So, HSC does have strong values, and I think that all the members of IEC recognize that this is one of the things that we at the Health Sciences Center have prioritized, which is recognizing and providing as excellent care as possible to all of our community members. And over time, we have been successful in getting a very high rating from from the Human Rights Campaign Health Care Equality Index. So this is something that we've had for, gosh, probably over 10 years now. It really recognizes all the work that we've done around these topics. All right, so let's just go through some super basic, just sort of like, I want to make sure everyone's got the basic terms around the dimensions of sex and gender. And there are a number of them. And so we're going to use this genderbread kind of figure to demonstrate some of the aspects of how you might be thinking about sex and gender. So the first one is our natal sex or sex assigned at birth or sex designation at birth goes under many different categories. And this is largely would be the sex you might think of at the time when an individual is born. And then it typically is going to have male or female. Now, also would recognize that there are individuals who are intersex for whom this doesn't work correctly. And this is a bit of an issue in the sense that in the clinical arena, our systems are largely built around a binary. And so having X or other options under the sex field is difficult. In fact, our electronic health record, it is not possible to have an alternative. You have to have either male or female. Now, so that's sort of like that's sex, but what's probably more important and why we call this presentation Identity Matters is that we really want to focus in on how an individual identifies. This is an older slide. I'm sorry, I didn't get it updated. This is a person's innate sense of being a man or a woman. The reason I'm saying it's wrong is that on our About Me form, where we collect information for patients, we have switched it. It should say man, woman, transgender woman, and we've switched the language from not completely male or female to gender non-binary. So on the, again, identity matters. So when you're looking at issues around trying to understand an individual's gender, it's really how they identify, right? So that's the part that you want to use, that's what you want to move forward. So as an example here, when we're talking about a trans man, again, remember, it's how a person identifies. And so this person identifies as a man, so they are a trans man. Typically, that should suggest, though, that their sex designation at birth was female. Similarly, for trans women, again, identity is what matters. So they identify as a woman, but their sex designation at birth is typically going to be male. And remembering that you'll often hear these terms cis and trans, this largely comes from chemistry, where things are on the same side versus on the opposite side. And so when on the cis side, if your sex assigned at birth and your gender identity align, we call that cis. And when their sex assigned at birth, but your gender identity is not in alignment, we call that trans. So that's where the word historically comes from. As mentioned, finally, we have a grouping, which is perhaps one of our largest groupings, which are individuals who identify as being non-binary. So not being exclusively identifying as a man or exclusively identifying as a woman, but potentially somewhere in between or something in that may be dynamic. And gender identity can always change in the way that sex designation is not something that typically we would say changes, where gender identity is something that can change over time. And lastly, sexual orientation. Again, this is how individuals would, how you would characterize their romantic, sexual, and emotional attractions. The last sort of term is gender expression. This was something we always bring this up because we often rely on clues, visual clues, for example, to understand potentially a person's identity. But again, this is something that does not necessarily align with your sex assigned at birth or your gender identity. It could be something completely different. And so this is the notion of how you comport yourself, the clothing you wear, the types of things that you interact in your daily lives. Some might be identified more masculine, others might be more feminine, or those that are somewhere in between or androgynous. And the last term that I want to just bring out is this notion of queer. So it is an umbrella term that is used to identify individuals whose identity and sexual orientation is someone outside of potentially a social norm. Historically, this was considered a derogatory term, and I always remember like Ed Fankovic, who has been one of my mentors. It's a very triggering word for him, and for many in the community, especially older individuals, this is not a positive word. But when we start looking at younger communities and younger people, this is a term that has been reclaimed and is prominently used. What I would suggest is only to use that term when an individual actually shares that as how they identify. All right, so that was just sort of the quick background, just make sure everyone's on page with some of the notions of sex and gender. What I'd like to move to now really is to sort of think about some of the ways that we, as leaders at our institutions, can make important changes to improve the lives for our constituents, our faculty, staff, our students, and our patients. So the benefit of making these structural changes is that it is possible to make significant advances that can be really important. The challenge often is that organizations are slow to change. Example, I have been working for quite a while to try and expand Banner and our systems to collect sexual orientation and gender identity, but it's a very slow process. This has literally been something we've been working on for years. And what is necessary is you really need leadership, and you need change champions who can really move individuals forward, move the system forward. Institutions that are healthcare or educational often do have tight and significant regulatory requirements, and so oftentimes this is a problem and a fear by those in leadership that we're doing something that might potentially put things in peril. Then finally, organizations themselves tend to have many different types of individuals.
That chicken that's there.
Seguro.
Yeah.
Hey, Francisco. Okay. So
Please pardon me.
no problem, Francisco. We tend to have lots of different, types of people. So we've got academic, we've got clinical folks, we have, again, individuals from very different backgrounds, some with, entry-level positions all the way up through our executives. And all of these things can make it, both a challenge to make these changes. So I just want to review again some of the things that we have done and the strategies that we have done to make this happen. So in my background, actually, is epidemiology background, and I focused on injury epidemiology, and which creates this is a framework that I have often used when we're trying to talk about making changes or behavioral change or organizational change, to divide it up into a number of different strategies that can be deployed to make these changes. And these strategies are along here on the left column. And so the first one, which again, so right now we're doing an educational intervention, which is really necessary to train our workforce in terms of awareness. Education is really important, but it's insufficient really to make any important changes. We can teach people, you can educate individuals around a topic. It often, though, doesn't necessarily lead to any significant changes. And instead, you have to bolster the education with additional changes. So some of those things might be basic encouragement and communication. Again, this is a bit of a weaker strategy, but it's reminding our organization and our employees and learners about these issues, and it tends to nudge some changes, but isn't necessarily making a huge payback. We have focused oftentimes on environmental change. And so examples of that might be changing our signage around single gender facilities, making our changes again on our electronic health record. And we also, for example, we remove sex from patient armbands. These changes can be moderately costly. Our electronic health record modifications, I have no idea how much it cost, but I'm sure it was running in the millions. It was very expensive. We devoted a lot of resources to this over about 2 years. Finally, the other things which I think are really important is enacting policies, procedures, or laws tends to be relatively slow, but it is important to make these structural changes, because then you can bring in enforcement mechanisms to really get organizations to make these changes. And then finally, it's also important really to evaluate these changes themselves to ensure that, as an example, we in the electronic health record, we look to see which clinics, for example, are doing a good job in terms of getting these expanded demographics in place. So just kind of want to go a little bit more in detail on just some of these topics. So education, as I mentioned, a necessary but insufficient mechanism. I like to think of this as really taking information and moving it towards a mode of transformation. We often do these things in terms of professional education, or we're doing, workforce training, such as this. It's also important, for example, to make explanatory teaching oftentimes that might accompany why you're making these changes to explain to individuals sort of just in time about why it's important to make them. So this is necessary, but you really do need to have a bigger picture and to have a roadmap. In fact, we actually, for the School of Medicine, we've actually created a roadmap around teaching sex and gender through the medical school. And we've had some pretty good successes actually on this roadmap. The environmental things, you mentioned the bathroom signage. Again, they can be very effective, but it can also be costly depending on the type of activity you want. Examples would be like we have on North Campus, we have a lot of very old buildings, and those bathrooms, for example, are not in sort of ADA compliance, let alone some of the other issues around sex and gender. And so the institution largely and reasonably so cannot really make these types of dedicated changes. And so what we're doing is really moving forward and ensuring that as we move forward that we're doing everything appropriate as best as we can. Mentioned the electronic health record. The About Me form is what we had used in this process to make these changes. And again, this is the updated one where I have the current gender identity again as man, woman, trans woman, and then we use the term gender non-binary. We've made some examples for those who are working within the system and electronic health record. We made changes to the banner. This is an older version. Currently, again, it's not completely male or female, but we created a mechanism to collect preferred or firm name, and those are presented here. We've actually changed the banner. It's actually now located much closer to the name itself. And embedded in with that, we also put in pronouns, and I'll show you an example of that. When we make these changes, oftentimes we have to make considerations about considering the safety of all involved. And so one of the issues that we made a decision in back in around 2017 or 2016 was to not show gender identity on the banner for individuals who are under the age of 18. And this is a notion to protect the individual's identities from potentially if they have a parent that is not supportive. But we do have preferred names show up on this regardless of age. I mentioned that pronouns, we have asked people to add their pronoun. In general, I'm trying to only use one word, in part because this name field has a limited number of characters. And so if you have a long name, then it's a challenge to put in, for example, multiple different pronouns. And so we encourage people to put in their name, put a hyphen, and then to put their pronouns simply. We made a change last year. This change, for example, took over a year, shockingly. This was to remove sex and patient armbands off of patient labels. So in the health system, we use these zebra printers to make armbands and to make stickers that would go on documents, maybe on a lab requisition. And for the longest time, it did have sex on them. And one of my colleagues and friends, Adrian Lawyer, who's a trans man, he made a comment in passing. He says, I looked down at my armband the other day and I noticed that it had my sex, and it just made me feel really, not supported. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about this. So really, we took that recognition to really move forward to remove it. The challenge is that the leadership, for example, thought that this was potentially dangerous and that we would be making mistakes in our care. And I tried to assure them that no one takes a look at the armband or the stickers to make big, important decisions about what you're going to do in terms of male or female. And all that information is still in the health record. It's just not on the patient-facing materials. So it's important when we make these changes to also make considerations about there are some risks and benefits. As I mentioned, the electronic health record does not allow an X, and so it can only be male or female, and that is a requirement. And remembering that a lot of our things, a lot of our results or our processes are tied back in the healthcare system to natal sex. And so some of those tests are normed in terms of their values. As an example, I have a friend who is a firefighter, is a trans man who's there. He is working under the norms for pulmonary function tests for a man, but he transitioned after puberty, so is physically smaller, and so the norms are just simply not correct for him. And so that's why an example of things that are super important. Health screening also is tied to natal sex and it's largely based on organs. Our system does not, for example, have organ inventories. Cerner doesn't have that. Epic does. And so while we could have a system that would be a little bit more robust, we have to basically navigate this and to make sure that we're doing our patients the best service as possible. When we made these changes around the electronic health record, in large part, this was based upon the Affordable Care Act and the Affordable Care Act section 1557 specifically, which was the portion that was really on non-discrimination. And they were quite progressive at that time and really made it quite clear that service lines cannot discriminate on individuals on the basis of their sex or gender identity. And so that really propelled a lot of changes across the country by this simple mechanism. Unfortunately, during the Trump administration, of course, it was rolled back, but nonetheless, a lot of these protections remained in place. We're continuing to do a lot of different things in the organization. One, I hope, I don't know, Tiger Connect is available for everybody on North Campus. I don't know if everybody uses it, but it will use your name as it is in the Active Directory. And so it's important. For example, there was a healthcare worker who had transitioned, but their name in the system was their legal name and they wanted to change it. And it is possible to make those changes, though it just hasn't been consistent. And so at times it can be a problem where an individual who has transitioned, but their legal name they have not made that change. It will sometimes be dead naming them as a process. And we continue to work on trying to make this fix happen. Some of the other things that we're working on in terms of the health system or on the UNM side, we are again working on making sure that we have an adequate number of bathrooms and creating some gender neutral change spaces using locker rooms, and then providing private spaces for everyone to make clothing changes. We've looked at we continually going over our policies to ensure that we are are in compliance. Then on campus, particularly on Central Campus, a number of things have been improved, and that was related back to the original changes that we made around 2015, 2016. So that's been really great for individuals at UNM. Most of their materials that they're using are affirming of their identities and their name. What can you do more specifically? One of the things is to remind yourself to affirm identities and to use gender neutral and non-assumptive language. Do not assume, for example, if a person is married, that they have an opposite sex spouse. So that would be one example. The other thing we ask people to do is to try, and it can be difficult, especially if you grew up in the South or have a military background, to avoid terms like sir and ma'am, and instead really ask people how they identify and to use the terms that they identify. If you are finding issues where in your work currently, wherever you are, and you're finding problems with paperwork and you need to make changes, and we're always looking out for these things and appreciate a heads up so that we can make those changes. Every change, for example, in the electronic health record requires specifically getting touched, because the gender identity, et cetera, is not a native field within Cerner. So we have to manually go through and make those changes. And so we focus again on patient-facing materials so that it is most affirming in those areas. But we're continually running into finding new ways and new issues where it comes up. And so we appreciate hearing about that so we can address it. It's important to create a positive environment and remember to stand up and defend our LGBTQ employees, coworkers, patients, and learners. Some of our basic work that we always have done in terms of microaggressions and the like. So we ask all to be an ally, take some development courses. The hospital does have some additional courses, and we offer the materials and a number of trainings that we encourage folks to attend. If you're finding single stall bathrooms, for example, and you need to get these relabeled, we can get that done. And so if you're finding something that should be fixed, let us know and we can get the appropriate signage out. And really look at your own policies and procedures in your various areas to see if there are opportunities to make improvements. Another thing, by the way, just sort of like I bring this out on our name badges. We, one of a number of residents who had trained at other facilities had their ID badges have their pronouns on them. And so we wanted to make that change. We thought that was a reasonable change. Organization didn't feel that way. They basically did not want to add anything on it beyond their name. We tried to convince them otherwise and really ran in a bit of a dead end. And so in lieu of that, we've created badge buddies. They are available at the badging office in the hospital. We have them for he, she, and they. Currently, by the way, they are out, and so we're reordering them. I'm not sure when they're available, but there's something that you can go to the badging office and get. We have some training that is offered through the system, through the health system, and I encourage folks to go in and look and take a look for those through the DEI group that they're offered. And finally, there is a toolkit that actually, this was a grant work that we had done in partnership with PIRE, and we actually used, for example, Southeast Heights Clinic as one of our sites to develop a toolkit that's available at lgbtqprimarycare.com. It has lots of great material that can be used for making improvements in your arena. Again, it doesn't have to be clinical. A lot of the stuff is looking at just some of the basics, general things around, flow, changing documents, looking at your spaces and ensuring that they are use non-assumptive language. Again, it's like, isn't necessarily a clinical thing. It can be generalized to any good sort of work environment or educational environment. I think that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions. I saw something pop up.
It's me.
Hey, Deanna. Or is that, or sorry, was it?
Pilar.
Hey, Pilar, go ahead.
I have a question. There's like one floor in the Dominici Center where the bathrooms have signs on it telling you to trust did people know what gender they are when they go into a bathroom. And I'm wondering, first of all, as a parent of somebody who is frequently misgendered and has had some unpleasant experiences, I'm wondering whether those signs work or if people don't even look at them and do what they're going to do anyway. And if they do work, it seems like a really low cost thing that could be spread all over HSC.
Yeah, definitely. Those signs were from main campus. The North Campus has not developed any specific materials around that. And, so Dominici, for example, is one of our first buildings where they implemented the requirement, the building code requirement of providing gender neutral spaces. And as we're moving forward, we're hoping to incorporate more of those. But I agree. I mean, I don't know the particular evidence around how those types of signs work. But I have never received any complaints about them. So I don't see any problems of pushing that more forward. I think it's a good idea. Hey, Deanna, do you want to say anything about your toolkit?
Sure. I am sorry I was off video. I've been sitting here eating while I've been listening. Yeah, I don't know if everyone is familiar with the concept of calling in, but it's, I think, a really helpful framework that pushes back really against the idea of calling out, which calling out has to do with like shaming people and making them feel badly and little, and we know that that doesn't help actually encourage behavior change. And so calling in, I think, is a really helpful tool for, if, for example, people are making mistakes with regard to pronoun use, to really kind of help them understand the impact that they're having, and really, calling them in as a way of helping them grow. So yeah, there's our toolkit, sort of hot off the presses. It has some examples. We've learned a lot from Dr. Loretta Ross, who is one of the sort of godmothers or grandmothers of reproductive justice movement. And she has spearheaded, I think, a lot around the calling in movement. So just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you, Deanna.
Like the signs are also in his Slack, along with free menstrual products and the men's, and just in case folks don't have chat access.
Yeah, so I mean, to just get back with Pilar, again, we don't own those. I probably got them from the resource center on main campus, and we can potentially get more. We can reproduce those types of signs. All right, Lindsay, back to you.
Perfect. And if folks have follow-up, should they just email you and Fabian?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I think that takes us to the end of our agenda for today, unless I'm misremembering it. But just another opportunity for any updates or announcements that folks might have had, or if you joined late. If I missed anything. Okay. Well, then let's end with 8 minutes to go. You can transition and go get some fresh air. It's always good to see you all. If you ever have content or topics that you'd like to see on the IEC agenda, just send myself or Dr. Romero-Leggett or Amherst an email, and we will figure out how to get you on the agenda. Also, if there's ideas you want us to reach out to anybody specific about a presentation, making the space as much about giving you information as well as an opportunity for us to get some professional development, and then think about how we can bring those trainings to our own spaces is a good use of this time too. Okay, well, happy Tuesday, and now moving into Wednesdays. So take care, everybody.